Hi guys, I'm El Gracian from elbowpepper.com. I want to share with you what happened when I ran a test over the summer. The question that we're answering is, if you were to cut down your tomato near to the ground, would it grow back? Would you get more fruit? Or would that be it? Would it just die? Now, maybe you're thinking, why would I ever want to do this? Maybe you wouldn't, but what if a storm were to come through and actually break the plant off? Maybe just snap it near to the ground. Should you just yank it out, put it in the compost pile, or wait for it to come back and maybe get a secondary harvest? Let's look at the tomato plants that I'm actually going to do this with. Here we are. It's July 27th. I've been getting quart after quart of delicious tomatoes from these guys. In fact, I'm a little bit inundated. Let's look here. These are some pretty vigorous, healthy tomatoes. They're both indeterminate. This red one is just a little bit smaller. The orange one has a slightly larger tomato that it produces, but they're both small in size. And on the new growth, it's still coming in pretty healthy. But when you look at some of the older growth, you can see a lot of damage from mites, and the leaves have just had the strength sapped out of them. They've started to turn brown and die. And I thought, maybe this might be a good time for me to clear these out and just see what happens. The way that I've decided to do this, which of course I'm not recommending that you do this, but I'm just simply showing what these plants do, how they respond if this were to occur. I've found some nodes where you can tell that there is the potential for some fresh vegetative growth, for the tomato to send up some suckers. And right above those points is where I'm going to cut all of these. They're not flush with the surface of the ground, but rather they're several inches up. So I go through, I cut these down, and there you go. All of a sudden I can see how much more space I have. My potatoes were being choked out, being smothered by this plant, and maybe now these corn that have been being blocked from getting good sunlight, maybe they'll be able to develop a little bit better. And I do have all that lush top growth that it seemed like a real waste to just throw away. I just got some buckets and I put all these stems that had all these tomatoes that weren't quite ripened yet in the buckets, and I put in a few inches of water at the bottom to try to keep the stems hydrated, and I want to see if maybe I might be able to ripen some of the fruit. It's really getting hot in here in the middle of July, but let's see what happens. Look at this. 5 days later, and rather than withering up and wilting, these stems are still holding on. They're remaining hydrated enough that it's allowing the remaining tomatoes to ripen. So if a stem were to break off of maybe one of your plants, just keep that in mind. That might be a way for you to prolong the ripening process of the tomatoes, maybe get them to the point that they're a little bit starting to turn red, and now you can take them inside and let them finish off on the windowsill. So this has only been 5 days, but look at what's going on here. We see some fresh growth, some sprouts coming forth from the plants. Yes, there's definitely some potential here for these to come back to life. And now, when we look just a week later, check it out. There's some progress. So, it's definitely a promising thing. Let's give it some time and come back in a little bit. Actually, it's been several weeks. September 21st. After approximately 2 months since I initially cut these down, look at the growth I'm getting. I'm already getting some tomatoes that are ripening, and I can see that in this particular situation, it definitely has worked. Finally, here it is, October 7th, just a nice full harvest of these late season tomatoes. No frost has set in yet, so until that happens, I could just keep harvesting these. And once again, I'm starting to get overwhelmed with more batches of tomatoes. So we can see firsthand if for some reason you wanted to cut these down, or if maybe something were to happen to the plants and inadvertently this were to happen, there is the potential for you to recover and still get a little bit of harvest before the season ends. I think that there are probably 3 most vital factors for you to think about in evaluating if you want to throw the plants away or let them continue on throughout the season. First of all, are you growing indeterminate or determinate tomatoes? The growth pattern of indeterminate and determinate is distinctly different. I was using indeterminate. That means that these plants will continue to send forth growth, they'll continue to fruit for an indeterminate and unspecified period of time. There is no limit. As long as the plants aren't killed by frost, as long as they're not running out of nutrients, as long as they're not becoming overcrowded, maybe in their containers, they'll keep pumping out growth. So I think that that's one vital factor to look at. Secondly, at what point in the season are you considering this? Whenever I actually tried this out, it was a good 2.5 months before there was any possibility of a fall frost. So I knew that I still had a reasonable amount of growing period ahead of me. And as it turned out, it was worth waiting. The final factor that you're going to want to think about is how large are the tomatoes? What is the ripening window for these tomatoes to have good fruit set and reach maturity? Do you have enough time within the season that remains? These being smaller tomatoes are very short in their season, and so it didn't take very long for them to already be ripening right on the vine, ready for me to harvest them once again. So hopefully that answers the question if you've ever wondered about it, or if maybe something has happened and here you are considering what to do. At least you can see from my results what happened in my situation. I appreciate you taking time to watch the video. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And as always, guys, happy gardening.